AutoGen. Build your own army of AI agents to complete any task.
The new AutoGen Studio is here and you have to see it. Take a look. Find the latest 5 papers on arXiv about LLMs. Use DALL-E to create an image that goes along with the theme of the papers. Create a PDF with the image on page 1 and the text summaries on page 2. Save the PDF to my desktop and we're going to hit play. Now, this is what's running in the background. It says to accomplish this task, I will perform the following steps, lists out all the steps, and starts searching arXiv for those research papers, finds several of them, here they are, creates a little summary, creates an image using one of its skills, we'll get to that in a second. Notice the PDF pops up on my desktop, and then creates a PDF, places the image, places the summaries, saves it to the desktop, and reports back. Here's that PDF, this is page 1, and here's page 2 with the summaries continuing into page 3.
That took the AI about 45 seconds to complete. It cost around 14 cents. It would take a human assistant 30 to 60 minutes to complete that task.
Pull the stock price info for Apple and Microsoft for the last 6 months. Create a PNG image that shows the chart comparison of the prices and save that PNG to my desktop. So here it finds the libraries it needs, imports matplotlib, finds the Apple and Microsoft ticker symbols, the pricing for each, and then saves it to my desktop. There's that. Here's another one. Pull the total market cap stock info for Apple and Microsoft for the last 6 months. Create a PNG image that shows the chart comparison of the prices. Save that PNG to my desktop. So it installs Yahoo Finance, finds the market cap data for Apple and Microsoft here, plots the data. The title is Market Cap Comparison Apple versus Microsoft last 6 months, labels the Y and X axes with date and market cap in trillions.
Here's that info researched, charted, and labeled.
So you might have heard about AutoGen, this AI agent framework that allows you to combine multiple agents to work on your behalf. Now, when it started, it was a little bit difficult. You had to use the terminal for it. You still do to install it and get it to work, but this new release makes it a lot easier in many ways. It adds a lot of very different capabilities like skills. You have to see it to really get a feel for how cool it is. It can code, it can do research, it can write stuff. And like they say here on the right, this is just the beginning. You're able to program by talking back and forth with the AI. They execute your ideas, they code them up as you're chatting with them. It's funny, this first comment says, this video really undersells the power of AutoGen. In this video, I'll walk you through how to install this and start using this. You don't need any background in programming or anything like that, although it is going to help. As you'll see, the installation process is somewhat complicated if you've never done this before. Now, about a third of the people watching this are God-tier developers. This first section might not be for you. You can skip to the next chapter in the video, but for the people that haven't done this before, I think this is a really good time to start. It can seem like rocket science at first, but once you learn a few basic commands and a few basic tools, it's actually very, very simple. It just looks kind of complicated. The good news is that ChatGPT, specifically GPT-4, can help you with a lot of this. I'm going to ask it to give me a quick summary of what Anaconda is, how to install it, and how to use it to create environments. So the first thing you have to know is that Python is a programming language that is very often used when dealing with AI. It's not the only one, but it is one of the more popular ones. You don't have to learn it, but it is nice to have a very basic understanding of what it looks like, what it can do, etc. Next, we have Anaconda. Anaconda is an open source distribution of Python, and it's used for a lot of computing, data science, and AI, machine learning applications. If you need to install on your computer, you go to the official Anaconda website, GPT-4 will give it to you, or just Google it. Once that's installed, you will have the Anaconda prompt that looks a little bit like this. It's basically what's called a terminal window. Just search for Anaconda and it will pop up right here. Here's what that looks like when you first launch it. Why this is important is because Anaconda allows you to create environments. Environments are kind of like their own separate little worlds that live on your computer that you can use to install a bunch of stuff, mess around with it, and later just delete that. It's its own little pocket where you can run certain codes, install certain software, and have it be separate from everything else. So if you're starting from scratch, you install Python, you install Anaconda, then you open up the Anaconda prompt, the terminal window. Next, we create an Anaconda environment where we'll install AutoGen. If you ever forget how to do that, just ask ChatGPT how to create an Anaconda environment. So you open up your Anaconda prompt, that's this thing right here. And the basic command is conda, like Anaconda, create, like we're creating an environment. And then -- name is the flag that we use to say that we're going to name this environment. And then we do space and we can say whatever we want to name it. If you're super cool, you just do -n for name instead of writing out --name. And then we name the environment. So in this case, will be AutoGen 2. And then I hit enter. It starts creating that environment. It says, do you want to proceed? Yes. And there it is. So it created the environment. It says to activate this environment, use, and it gives you this command, conda activate AutoGen 2, which you can just copy and paste in there. Activating that environment, you can think of as like going into that environment. Once you're in there, everything you do in that environment stays in there. So later, if you mess something up or you want to do something else, you can just delete that thing and it will have no effect on the rest of your computer. It's isolated. All right, so we hit enter. As you can see now, we changed from base to AutoGen 2. So we're now in that environment. All right, I'll put a link in the description that goes to my website, natural20.com, that will have hopefully the updated installation instructions, because this is where it gets a little bit difficult. So if you're a new user, this might seem complicated, but there's a reason for why it happens. Right now, due to all the different versions of Python and AutoGen that are out, we have to make sure that we install the right ones so that they can work together correctly. So what I showed you before will work most of the time if you're doing this right now as the video is being released at the beginning of January. There's a few hoops to jump through. Again, I'll put a link down in the description with a link to my website that's going to show hopefully the updated directions to do that. But right now I'll call the environment AutoGen 3. And as you can see here in ChatGPT 4, so when it's saying conda create my environment, and then it says Python equals 3.8, this will create an environment named whatever you named it with Python 3.8. And this is the problem is if we put this here right now, in order to run AutoGen Studio, it needs at least a 3.9, Python 3.9. If you search what is the latest Python version, it'll give you the latest releases for Windows. So it has to be at least Python 3.9, and this is where it gets annoying. It can't go as high as 3.12. It has to be less than 3.12. So I'll just do 3.9, and we'll hit enter. It's going to ask us, do you want to create that environment with the following things installed? We say yes. And then it says to activate this environment, use this thing here. We can just copy and paste it. And activate here means kind of like going into it. Once you go into that environment, everything you install and do in that environment, it's sort of its own isolated thing. So later you can just delete it and it's not going to affect anything else on the computer. So we hit enter, and now we are in AutoGen 3, our new environment. So again, think of this as like we just set up a brand new workshop with all the things that all the tools that we need in there. And now we're inside that workshop and we're going to start working. That workshop is called AutoGen 3, and it's referred to as the Anaconda environment. All right, so the next thing to understand is pip install. Pip install is just a way of installing new software on your computer in that environment. So similar to how if you downloaded the setup file for a new software, you double click on it and it starts installing. It's the same thing here, but we type pip install to install it. So for example, here in AutoGen 3, we say pip install py AutoGen, and we hit enter. And it downloads and installs everything that we need, and now it's complete. And next, we need to install AutoGen Studio. So we type pip install AutoGen Studio, and we hit enter, and it starts installing everything that we need for that. We've installed AutoGen Studio. We're almost ready to go. In order to make everything work, if we're using, for example, OpenAI's models like GPT-4, we need an OpenAI API key. You're going to find that at platform.openai.com/API-keys, or just Google OpenAI API keys. This is kind of what that looks like. You have to log into your account and you have to have billing set up so they can charge you for usage of whatever model you're using. And we're going to click create new key, call it whatever. I'm going to call it AG3. That's going to create the new secret key, copy it here. Don't worry, I'll delete this before I post the video. And you should be careful of this key. Don't give it to people because then they can use your account and basically get you in trouble or run up your credit card bill. So keep this safe. And so basically we want to save our API key as a variable in here so that AutoGen can use it. So the command for that on Windows is set, and I believe on Mac it's export. I'm going to say set OpenAI underscore API underscore key equal, and then I'll paste the key in there and I hit enter. Now that key is saved and everything will run. Next, we'll type AutoGen Studio space UI, then -- port space 8081. So what this does is it opens a local port on your computer. What that means is kind of like your computer opens a door that you can walk through and interact with the stuff inside. It's local, meaning that you can do it from your computer, but no one else can do it from theirs. And then I'll push enter. And it says, run it on this URL. Now this URL is local to you. So for example, if I go to google.com, I will go to Google servers. If I go to this URL, this basically is running on my own computer. It's running locally. So I paste that into the URL and AutoGen Studio pops up. Here it is. you have now created an Anaconda environment, installed everything you need, including Python, including AutoGen Studio, and now this thing is pretty much ready to run. There are two things that you might want to do to improve the experience. So here's Microsoft, kind of their documentation for best practices for running AutoGen locally. So they're saying that we highly recommend using Docker for code execution. So you also need to install this Python package Docker. So pip install Docker, I'll copy that. And you can use Control-C to shut down. If it's running in the background, hit Control-C to shut it down. And we're going to pip install Docker. And that's going to install all the libraries that Microsoft is recommending that you have to run AutoGen successfully or effectively. Next, when AutoGen runs, sometimes you get this error message. It seems that PowerShell execution policy is still preventing the installation of the required packages. So basically, your computer security system prevents it from running too many scripts because, that could be a security issue. Now, AutoGen is smart enough to basically run a Python script to install the packages.
So you can disable those safeguards if you know what you're doing, or just let it run as is. It will still figure it out.
All right, so now once that's done, again, you can run the AutoGen UI --port 8081 to open that port again. It gives you the link. So just copy that link, paste it in there, and here it is, session created successfully. Now, I know that might have been complicated. The thing is, once you've done this a few times, it becomes like second nature. There's only a few commands you need to know, a few concepts that you need to understand. You don't need to take a course to pick this up. You just need to know how to install Python, use the Anaconda environments, and how to install the needed software within those environments. And there's a few commands that do pretty much all of it. All right, now we are inside AutoGen Studio, the user interface that kind of acts like a website, like a web page where you can do all sorts of things. So let's do a quick tour. So there's 3 tabs up here: Build, Playground, and Gallery. Let's start with Build. We can create skills, agents, and workflows for building multi-agent capabilities. It comes pre-programmed with 3 workflows for travel agent group chat workflow, general agent workflow. This is what I've been using, and it's pretty effective for a lot of tasks. And then the visualization agent workflow. You can create new workflows like this, name it, define it, how you get summaries, whether it's usually the last thing they say is kind of a summary of what it did. So that's pretty good. You can also set none or an LLM summary. I haven't tried this one yet. This might be good for troubleshooting stuff, but by default, it's at last. And then you have a sender and receiver. So those are your bots, your agents. We'll go into that in more detail later. Then you have your agents, right? So you have your user proxy. So this is the person, this is your agent that you're talking to. You're like, hey, I want this done. And that user proxy then goes and starts handing out tasks. So in this case, we just have the primary assistant that writes plans and codes to solve those tasks. But this can be much more complicated. So for example, you might recall chat dev, we covered it in a different video, where you have different departments, and each of these little guys and gals here are their own version of ChatGPT or whatever LLM that you're using. So you have the designing, you have the coding, the testing, and the documenting. And then you also have the chief technical officer. I think that's this guy. And so basically he goes here and starts by designing the process. Then the coders code it up. Then the testing, irons out all the bugs, and then the documenting writes out the manual for it. So I forget how many of these guys there are, but you can basically replicate something like this with AutoGen. Now, if you've tried doing that in the past and failed because it was too complicated, it got a lot easier. We'll take a look at that in just a second. But basically here, you can create new agents, set various consecutive auto replies, how often they ask for human input. Like every single time they're like, oh, do you have anything else to say? And then you can add your own stuff, or never. They keep going until it's completed. And this is the system message, basically the text to control agent behavior. This is where you tell it who it is. You give it the soul, its life's purpose. Something like, you pass the butter. For example, now this AI that you've just created, all it does is just passes the butter. And then here's the model. So you can have GPT-4. So this is the 1106 preview. That's the model that's rolled out on November 6th. And here you can add pretty much whatever you want as long as you have the API keys for it. I haven't messed around with this yet, but that's next on my list. And add skills that are available to the agents. What are skills? Here are the skills. For example, one of the skills is find papers on archive. Fetch profile fetches the text content from a personal website. Given a URL of a person's personal website, this function scrapes the content of the page and returns the text found within the body. And this basically teaches the AI to do that thing, or generating images. So here we're using DALL-E 3. And by the way, it's very good at this. It's very effective at this because this teaches it how to do all of it. So when it needs to, it grabs this skill and it executes it. Here's find papers on archive, and everything that is needed is in there to do that. Archive, it's pronounced archive for people that are unfamiliar with it, is just a place where there's a lot of scientific papers that are published. You can just grab them as a PDF. You don't need to log in or anything. It's kind of an incredible thing that we have actually. And so here you can build your various skills for the agent. So you can build a skill that, for example, goes to 11 labs and use the API to create an AI voice for some text that you need. So text to voice, or pretty much anything else that you can do as code. So here, for example, is an ASCII art that creates a little kitten. An absolutely crucial skill for these AI agents to have. Next, we have the playground. So this is the sort of the main thing where you're going to be interacting with it back and forth. And the gallery, which right now I don't have anything in there, and my previous ones haven't been saved. Oh, because I reinstalled it. So in my previous ones, this probably shows the list of all the things that I've already done. So do you want to take this baby out for a spin? Let's get started. So we're going to hit new, and you can view all the workflows there. And let's do general agent workflow, create. And so they give you 4 kind of examples. So stock price, it's that one where it does Tesla versus Facebook. Let's try paint. Paint a picture of a glass of Ethiopian coffee, freshly brewed in a tall glass cup on a table right in front of a lush green forest scenery. So while this is processing, if you go back to your Anaconda prompt, it will actually kind of show you the stuff that's happening behind the scenes. Now, a lot of this will be on this web page here at the end of it, but if you kind of want to follow it along live, just kind of scroll down and see what is happening. So as you can see here, I assume it used the skill of generating the images. Yeah, so as you can see here, so it's saying from skills, so from its own skills that it's created, it imports the skill called generate and save images, right? So that gives it the instructions that it needs to do that. So it just follows those instructions and then it's saved with the file name. That's the file name. And then terminate means it ended the process. So it's like, okay, done. So as you can see here, everything that we saw happening is right here. So this is the skill that it imported to generate images. And then here is the file. Now, I've been having a hard time opening these files inside of this sort of web page that it kind of creates for us. So I'm going to I copied the file name. I save this file to my desktop. Now, normally that gets saved in the working directory, which is going to be the directory that's created when you create that environment. It's like 50 layers deep. So you can just search for it and find that file, or you can have just the directory open somewhere, or you can actually just tell it, hey, at the end of every prompt, just say, hey, save that to this specific directory or to your desktop so you can see it, etc. And so as you can see it here, it thinks through what it has to do to save this file to the desktop. I will provide you with a Python script that you can run. And then it looks like it can't find it. So it says, I need to make a script to find that. So it does that, it finds it. So it had some issues finding it. So it just kind of regenerated it. And then here is that image. Now there's a million things that you can do with this. So I've been messing around with it all day and probably for the last 4 hours or so, just doing a lot of random stuff. And so it looks like it charged me $4.50 in GPT-4 Turbo credits. And the image models, the DALL-E, the image making side of it, that cost 24 cents. And this is just the default general agent workflow with 2 agents and just these 3 predefined skills. The amount of stuff that we're going to be able to do with just this by itself, the AutoGen Studio, once we're able to create skills and various different agents for it, will be kind of limitless. I am kind of blown away by how big this could be. Now, you might be saying, yes, but isn't it difficult to create these agents and these skills? Don't you need to be a super smart developer and coder to be able to do this? Here's the thing. Someone created an AutoGen Builder. So I got to give this person credit, Thinking Abacus. I'm not familiar with this person/company, but they've created a GPT, like a custom GPT that is public that anyone can access, that says, I will transform your ideas into as many agents as required. And so, as a start, you can ask whatever you want. But what's interesting here is one of them is, can I upload a screenshot of a flow? Which I was curious to see, is it able to generate something like this? So I saved this image and let's see if it's able to do it. So I uploaded that image. I'm going to say, create a game development agency. There will be 4 departments: designing, coding, testing, and documenting. Each will have 1 agent that runs that department. The user proxy agent will be like the CTO, the chief technical officer. So the user proxy, remember, that's kind of like your guy, your agent. So you talk to them. They're like your sergeant or whatever. You're like, hey, you do this. And it goes and it deals with everybody else on your behalf. So the user proxy agent will be like the CTO and will deal with the others to make the final product. So, I think normally I would expand on what designing, coding, and testing, and documenting, specifically what they do. Let me just hit enter and see where it goes. And then we'll see if we need more explanations or not. All right, so it's creating it. And by the way, I'm just using just one agent per department. Obviously, we can do more like we do here, which in a lot of different AI research has been shown that multiple agents working together, especially if they're a little bit different, if they're all kind of coordinating and working together, they tend to be better at their results than just one kind of working in isolation. That's why AutoGen is such a big thing, because it allows us to really tap into that power. And so it writes the Python script that you need to create those agents, and it writes everything out. So the user proxy agent, the name is CTO, the system message. So it's when you tell it what it is, you breathe life into it. Here's, you pass the butter, that's your mission. So this is a human admin overseeing game development. And again, this is text, so I can just go in there and change it before I use it. So I can change whatever I want. And then he creates the design agent, and the system message is responsible for game design. Again, I think Chat Dev has their system messages listed somewhere. So it might, at this point, might even make sense to just take those and even just paste it in there. But my point is, you can change this text to whatever you want. Here's the group chat with all the agents and the group chat manager. Now, the thing is, I think a lot of this, you don't need it anymore because of the new UI. Because you have this, you don't need it as much. So when you're creating a new agent, really, you're just writing the system message in here and naming it, etc. I wonder if I say, help me create a skill. So skills are the things that the agents can use to complete the task. Help me create a skill that, let's say, checks the weather. All right, so we'll hit enter. Let's see if it can give me code to create a skill that checks the weather. So it gives us kind of like a basic generic thing, but you have to kind of set your own, you got to tell it what API you want to use and stuff like that, what service you want to use. I'm very tempted to create my own AutoGen Builder GPT. I gotta say, it's that Steve Jobs quote, right? Good artist copy, great artist steal. I'd love to build one specifically that kind of walks people through how to build skills and agents here. With all that said, this was a basic overview for how to install and get up and running with this thing. The installation is probably going to change over time. In this particular moment, since it's so new, there's stuff that's a little clunky. Over time, it's going to get easier. But I do encourage you, if you have an interest in this, to try to figure out how to install it if you haven't done it before. I know it might seem a little bit daunting, but this is a very reusable skill. You're going to be using this skill a lot if you're dealing with AI and all this sorts of stuff. As you'll see in the next video, you don't have to learn how to code from scratch. This can do a lot of that for you. Now, obviously, right now, this is not going to be comparable to a team of highly experienced engineers. There's still issues and there's still hallucinations, there's still problems, but it's advancing rapidly. It's getting really good, and I'm excited to see where it goes next. I'm going to be doing more videos on this, covering more specific topics like skills, agents, workflows. If you're interested in that, make sure you hit thumbs up, subscribe, comment, share if you can. The reason being is that helps me get this message out there. It helps pump up the video, and it helps me do more of this type of content. And it really does help. It really does help push this thing out there. So if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I hope that was helpful. Stay tuned for more AutoGen content. My name is Wes Roth, and I'll see you next time.